Hi everyone, it's Travis Weir with Texas Specialty Hunts. Thanks for joining us tonight. So I'm here at the ranch tonight at the Divided Vine Ranch here in San Angelo. It's a home place of Texas Specialty Hunts. And what we're going to talk about tonight is Texas Whitetail. So I've been hunting whitetail in Texas professionally for 29 years or so. And we've seen the deer from this end of the spectrum to this end of the spectrum. So we're going to talk about a little bit about that tonight. So I'd like you guys to jump on, be very interactive in the conversation about Texas whitetail. Let me know what you think. Also, let me know where you guys are from, and we'll go from there. So I started hunting whitetail in Texas professionally in 1991, I guess. Between 1990 and 1991, I was working on a large ranch here in West Texas. I was doing their their deer harvest data. So when the hunters harvested their whitetails, I was measuring their horns, I was aging them, weighing them, collecting data to hopefully one day better their deer herd. So back in the day, um, we were shooting deer anywhere from 120 inches on the on the lower end, up to 150 inches on the higher end. We did shoot some bigger, but every year that was kind of the norm. So the whitetails have changed a lot from then till today. So what we have done in Texas is, we've kept up with the demands of our hunters. So the hunters bar has been raised higher and higher and higher and higher every year. So, like I say, when I first started hunting, if we could shoot a 130-inch deer, we'd done something. So, the next year, 10 years, whatever, the guys wanted more. So, there's only so many deer that each ranch can produce each year that are of that quality. Back then, 130, 140, 150-inch deer was a big deer. And it's still a big deer today. But the hunters, they wanted bigger deer. So let's talk a little bit about um, free range whitetail. And let's talk about high fence whitetail. So free range whitetail hunting here in Texas. So are you guys getting too much wind noise? Is that what's going on here? So anyway, um, so the low fence country. So free range whitetail in Texas, all the ranches have done a great job in the last 20, 30 years of managing these free range whitetail. So the deer, it took a lot of work, harvesting management deer every year, shooting the correct number of does, doing your helicopter surveys, making sure your buck to doe ratio is correct, supplemental feeding, etc. So we did that for a number of years on both low fence and high fence. We did it on both. And so we took our deer to a little higher level by managing these deer, like I said, with the helicopter surveys, supplemental feeding, keeping the buck to doe ratio correct, and keeping our age class correct. So as time goes on, these deer got bigger. Well, so did the demand for bigger deer. So we started on the high fence side, we started breeding deer. And so we erected some pens, we put does in there, we caught deer out of the pasture with the helicopters, We'd throw a breeder buck in there with the does, a good buck that we could find on the ranch, and we'd put that buck in there with the does. We'd breed the does. We'd turn the does out, let them have their babies. Do it again next year. Well, that evolved into an industry in itself, the deer breeding business, and it's done all throughout the United States, not just in Texas. Um, so that's a we can discuss that. That's a whole nother video in itself. But basically, what we do in the whitetail breeding industry is we take these pedigrees of these deer and we stack them on the bottom side. The does is what is producing. So I believe, and this is just my opinion, that 70% of what you get on their head comes from the doe. So we started stacking these genetics on the bottom side, which is the doe side, deeper and deeper and deeper for predictability. So we knew these deer were going to have big brow tines. We knew these deer were going to be wide, big beams, nice look. Um, so everybody was just wanting bigger, 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 bigger. And so, you know, we thought we were doing the right thing. We were breeding for inches, 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 and the deer got a little bit out of hand as far as appearance goes. So we kind of backed off of that. And now we're breeding for more typical type deer in the breeding operation. So by doing that, our end goal is to take these bucks and release them onto the ranch. Take these does, release them on the ranch, and try to stack these deer on the ranch, their genetics, as well as we have in a pen situation. And it works. So we produce some really good deer here at this ranch. So this ranch is the Divided Fine Ranch located in San Angelo, Texas. So I bought this ranch 13 years ago. And it was just a free range ranch, low fenced. I high fenced it. I started introducing genetics. I bought bred does. I introduced those does into the ranch, let them have babies, selectively harvest my management bucks, my inferior deer, and got rid of a lot of does that were inferior in genetics. And so over the course of the last 12 years after that, every year our yearlings are better and better and better. So what this means to you as a hunter is now we've got big deer to meet your demands. So, this has taken a long time for us to get to where we are now. Not not only me, but the industry as a whole. So we interesting story is 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we had a deer here at the ranch and he started coming around and he became pretty friendly. And so we made him kind of the mascot of Texas specialty hunts. And a lot of you guys that have been here, you all have seen Buddy. And so Buddy was, when he started coming around, in the ranches, it's high fence, but it's 1,650 acres. And so this deer just showed up. We have deer that show up all the time. So this deer showed up and he became friendly. So we started feeding him. And so Buddy, at a 2 year, when he came up, he was 2 years old. He was a typical 10 point with a small drop tine. He probably scored 140 inches. So year after year, this deer kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And he is just 100% on native range. Of course, we supplemental feed with cottonseed. We supplemental feed with protein. And so this deer lived until he was 9 years old. He died of natural causes last January, 2 years ago, January. So this is one of his sheds from when he was 8.5. So he was 8.5 when we found this set of sheds. So here's Buddy at 8.5. He was a pretty incredible deer, as you can see. So, like I say, he was not raised in a pen. He was not turned out of the pen. He was raised out of some genetics that came about somewhere on the ranch. Um, so Buddy, that was him at 8.5. So when we found Buddy when he had passed away, this was him when he was 9 years old. So he's an exceptional deer. You know, at 9 years old, you can see that, and you can tell. I mean, this is his real skull cap. We found him, and I cut him off. So you know, he was the exception in the deer industry, the deer world. That he actually lived to be 9.5, and he grew this awesome set of antlers with very smooth teeth in his head. So when the deer get old, their teeth get smooth and they have a hard time with their food. So he was an exceptional deer. So we all miss Buddy, and I'm sure all you guys out there and Daniel Vince, he's online with us. Daniel has been hunting with us since he was a kid. Um, Congratulations on the new one, by the way. So Danny's been hunting with us for a long time, and he's seen Buddy kind of evolve from, just a normal deer to what he was last year. So my goal here at the ranch is I try to grow 10 deer in each age class. So 10 1-year-olds, 10 2-year-olds, 10 3s, 10 4s, 10 5s, and 10 6s. Because my hunters here at the ranch, that's about what we need. And so we can manage that pretty easily. We get these deer where most of them are close to 200 or a little over 200. Um, I've grown one deer in the pasture that was over 300 inches. His name was Trace, and as a yearling, he was a 3 point. As a 2-year-old, he was a typical 12 point, and that was an exceptional deer. He unfortunately died at 4 years old, and he was over 300 inches. So the point is the genetics, the food, and the age. You put those three things together, and hopefully you've got something. But you've got to start with something as well. You've got to start with good genetics to end up with good deer. So what's on top of their head, and that all comes from what I believe from their mamas. And so we hold our does to a pretty high standard here at the ranch. And to us, that's the most important thing. The bucks are secondary. Of course, they're great for the hunters and they're great, to look at and stuff like that. But our does is what produce this stuff. So, if you guys have any questions about what we do or how these deer have evolved, feel free to jump in there. But it's not rocket science raising big deer. It's just a matter of having good genetics and understanding. But you need age, nutrition, and genetics. So we've been pretty successful here. And if you guys want to book a whitetail hunt with us, we'd love to have you. A lot of you guys that's hunted with us in the past, a lot of you guys are coming again this year. And the deer we've got this year, they're about 60% grown, 60 to 70% grown right now, and they're looking pretty good. So, we've done a really nice job here in Texas of increasing our antler production on both our free range whitetail deer as well as our high fence deer. Some of these guys that are managing these free range ranches are doing a phenomenal job. They're growing real pretty typical bucks that are in the 200 to 220 inch range. It's just it's a lot of work to try to manage deer in a low fence situation, because you always have an influx of inferior deer coming onto the ranch from neighboring ranches that may not work as hard as you to keep up with that. So my ranch is high fenced, and it really helps out, accelerates the process, because once we get our genetics like we like them, then we can keep them that way, because we don't have deer jumping the fence coming in that we don't want. Um, not a matter of keeping the deer in. Of course, we like to keep them in, but it's a matter of keeping those deer out. So there's been a lot of scrutiny um, over high fence hunting on the last 20 years. So some of that started early on, back in the, I'd say, mid 90s. A lot of guys just didn't think about what they were doing, and they were harvesting deer in smaller acreages. They didn't have a lot of brush, and it kind of got a bad name. But here at the ranch, and most ranches that I hunt, I don't only hunt the ranch here in San Angelo. I hunt ranches all over Texas. So we try to keep the deer as wild as possible, except for Buddy. Of course, he was like our Labrador, but most of the deer here are pretty wild. Um, we try to keep them coming to the feeders and stuff like that, so we can check on them. But they are by no means pets, and it's by no means just a simple hunt. And every year we end up harvesting one or two deer that we didn't even know we had. And I'm in the helicopter all the time. I'm flying the ranch a lot, and they just, sometimes those bucks just disappear on us, and they show up, and we're surprised. So, hopefully nowadays people understand what we're doing, and we're in it for the betterment of the species, and we're in it to facilitate our hunters as well. It's a hard job keeping everything, all the wheels spinning. It's constantly changing stuff on the deer side, and it's constantly changing stuff on the customer side. Because now the bar has been set so high that I very rarely get calls, people wanting to hunt deer under 170 inches. Um, Most of my clientele over the past 5 years, 4 or 5 years, 5 years, let's just say 5 years, they want deer over 170 inches, so that's what we're producing. And we're trying to produce a deer, like I say, that's pretty nice and typical, and make it a good hunt. Um, we as guides, we don't want to go out there and it not be a good hunt. Our hunters want to have a little bit of a challenge as well. So, you know, I I honestly believe that I can go on a free range hunt or a high fence hunt, and the only difference is I know the deer are there in the high fence hunt. The deer in the low fence hunt or a free range situation, um, they may not be there that day. They may not be there tomorrow. You know, but they'll show up at some point. So it's been a fun road raising these deer, and um, we've just now got them kind of where we want them after 12 years of doing this. So it's fun to watch these deer grow up. Um, that's really all I had for you guys tonight. I just wanted to go over a little bit about what we do here at the ranch, and kind of the evolution of the whitetail, and kind of the start of my hunting career with whitetails, and where it is today. This year we'll do the same thing. We'll hunt a bunch of big whitetails, and have a good time doing it. It's just a different animal these days. So if you guys want to book a hunt with us, call Mercy or Rob. Numbers at the top of the screen. Um, be sure to join us next week. I don't really have a topic for next week, but I'll come up with something between now and then, and I'll let you guys know. But hit that like on the Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channels, and we'll see you next week.